Hello, and welcome to Stories from India. This is a podcast where we talk about myths, legends, and folk tales from India. I am your host, Narad Muni, and am a mythological character myself. I have the gift of eternal life and knowledge of the past, the present, and the future. By profession, I'm a traveling musician and a storyteller. So the way I'm doing my job is by podcast. In this episode, we are going to do a Jain folktale. This one is about a necklace gifted to a king and queen by a god. The gift turns out to be a white elephant. It causes pain, suffering, and loss. But these problems are eventually solved by a monkey who was really human and a victim of the necklace himself. So let's dive right in. King Shrenik ruled Rajgir, which was a city near the famous ancient University of Nalanda. We can talk a bit about Rajgir or the City of Kings, but for the purpose of this story, it was just a generic kingdom about 3 or 4,000 years ago. King Shrenik was absolutely devoted to the Devs or the gods. He had dedicated pray time every day. He had dedicated playtime too, which he would sometimes miss, but prayer time? Never. His prayers weren't aimed at any specific god. He tried to pray to as many of them in as little time as he could manage. He seemed well on the path to setting a record, considering the millions of devs available in the prayer catalogue. But some gods are easier to please than others, as I'm sure you know from my descriptions of Brahma in earlier episodes of the show. It was the same with one generic dev who one day suddenly appeared before Shrenik. The generic dev explained that he was here to reward the king for his devotion. And by rewarding him, he actually meant rewarding his wife, Queen Chelana. If Shrenik was disappointed, he did not show it. Chelana had never accompanied him in the prayer room. And yet, she was the one getting a reward. When the Dev handed him a gorgeous necklace, he quickly changed his mind. The necklace consisted of beautiful precious gems, all strung together on a fine gold chain, as thin as silk. This necklace was going to be the talk of the town, and at the next king's congregation, people would come to him asking for the address of the jeweler who made it. Shrenik need not be completely truthful then. He could use that opportunity to drive up business in his kingdom. He could smell the profits and the favorable trade negotiations from miles away. He rubbed his hands with glee, with the necklace still in it. And seeing that, the Dev quickly cautioned him. Shrenik and Chelana had to be very, very careful with the necklace. If anything should happen to it, it would be disastrous. The person who mended the necklace was destined to pass away the moment they fixed it. The Dev didn't know why that clause was there, but it just was. Hey, he was just a low-level Dev. If Shrenik wanted an unconditionally amazing necklace, he should have just prayed to the Devs higher in the rankings. Shrenik and Chelana made the most of the necklace and used it to dazzle their guests at the parties. And everything seemed to be going really well. Until one day, it wasn't. As the queen was putting on the necklace one day, her hand slipped and the necklace clattered to the ground. the jewels coming off the string and spreading all over the floor. Her very honest maids helped her collect every last precious stone, without even being tempted to pocket some of them. But the damage was done. The necklace had broken. They tried repairing it themselves, but they couldn't. There didn't seem to be a hole in the jewels. How had the gold chain strung them together? Chelena had to call it quits. She went to the king for help. The king was distressed, not by the fact that the person who repaired it would die, but all the missed opportunities while the necklace was waiting to be repaired. There was the king's convention next week, and he was hoping to snatch a good number of trade agreements there. Chelena, without her necklace, would make him seem less impressive at the negotiating table. After consulting with his ministers, he decided that the way forward was to announce a reward for whoever could repair the necklace. But he had to be very transparent about the outcome, that whosoever repaired the necklace would die. Naturally, no one came forward the first day. On the second day, a very old jeweler volunteered. He would repair the necklace in exchange for the measly sum of 40,000 rupees. He chose that number because he had 4 sons. It would be easy to divide if the reward was 4 times a round number, rather than just a round number. The king accepted verbally, and the jeweler, whose name was Kapi, took the necklace home. He explained to his sons that they must take the necklace back to the king after he had repaired it. They would have to claim their 40,000 rupees. The sons objected a little, but ultimately they saw that this was a reasonable path forward to get out of their very poor situation. Kapi began his work. Only with very specialized equipment could he see that there was indeed a tiny hole in each stone. But how was he going to string it all together? He thought for a while and then hit upon a plan. He would get ants to do the work for him. He thought his idea was brilliant. Laughing at his own dad joke, he made a tiny lasso using the thinnest piece of string he could find. He lassoed an ant and enticed it towards some sugar. Only, the path from the ant to the sugar cubes went right through the holes in the jewels. To the ant, it was like traveling through a series of tunnels. Well, in no time the ant had reached the other end. At which point, feeling triumph and another dad joke, Kapi let loose the noose. He had just finished tying the chain together and was admiring his work when the inevitable happened. The Dev had promised that the person who repaired the necklace would pass away. And that's exactly what happened to Kapi. Kapi's sons, still grieving, took the necklace to the king and sorrowfully asked for their 40,000 rupees. The king was sure to take the necklace and put it out of their sight before asking them suspiciously, "And how did you come by this necklace?" "I gave it to Kapi." They explained that they were Kapi's sons. They had the whole family tree and birth and ancestry records to prove it. But Shrenik waved his hand dismissively. All of those could be forged. He said he really ought to throw them in jail for taking an old man's hard work and trying to use that to steal his reward. "But the old man is dead," Kapi's sons protested. "Well, I don't know that for sure, do I?" asked Shrenik. "I'll prefer to wait until I'm sure." There was only a limit to which Kapi's sons could argue with Shrenik. Dejected, they went back home. This was the worst day of their lives. They had lost their dear father, and for nothing. As they sat sobbing, someone came in to visit them. He came in through the window from a nearby tree, because this visitor was a monkey. "Hello, my boys," he said, in an oddly familiar voice. It was Cuppy. He claimed to have been reborn as a monkey, true to his name. They refused to believe that until he revealed to them embarrassing details about their childhood that only their father knew. Cuppy admitted that he had been a bit careless. He should have had his lawyers draw up an ironclad contract and will and everything. But never mind. It was too late to cry over spilled milk. One of Cuppy's sons looked around to see where the milk had spilled. I guess they didn't teach idioms in ancient Indian schools. Anyway, Cuppy had a plan. He asked his sons to sit tight while he did something to teach Shrenik a lesson. He rushed to the queen's garden, where the queen and her maids were taking a bath in the pond. Conveniently, the queen had left the necklace by the side of the pond, along with her clothes. It was easy enough for Cuppy to collect the necklace and disappear into the trees. Chelena and her maids were distressed at the turn of events. They frantically searched everywhere, but they didn't find anything. They cursed the fact that security cameras hadn't been invented yet. But there wasn't really anything further they could do. They went back to give the bad news to the king. Shrenik was upset. What was this? He had just refused to pay a measly sum to Cuppy's sons, and then the necklace was lost again? Was this poetic justice? Or at least Pied Piper-like justice? Shrenik announced a big reward and huge punishment for whoever took the necklace and whoever returned it. Phrased like that, his announcement posters needed to be revised. That the reward was only for whoever returned it, and the punishment was for the thief. The announcement didn't specify what would happen if the thief returned the necklace. Maybe they would be rewarded with a big punishment, or maybe punished with an unpleasant reward. But everywhere anyone looked, they didn't find the necklace, and no one came forward. As it happens, Cuppy didn't just hang on to the necklace all this while. He had a plan. The plan was to go to the temple. He found a well-respected rishi who was deep in meditation at the time. Cuppy put the necklace around the meditating rishi's neck and disappeared. He went back to his sons to tell them everything would be fine and that their troubles were over. The sons wondered, how exactly? They didn't have the necklace. The king was mad and would probably come searching here and put them in prison just on suspicion. And their father wasn't going to be with them ever again. Sure, he was here as a monkey, but it was not the same experience. He couldn't sit at the dinner table. His tail got in the way. He couldn't eat most of the food they had and preferred to eat fruits only. He wasn't going to sleep in his former bed. He preferred to live in the tree branches. And he had new friends now in the monkey world and his own life to lead. There was one point that they did not say, but Cuppy understood. What would the neighbors think, looking at the 4 boys fraternizing with a monkey? Some may empathize. Some may think it was an upgrade. And some might protest to the SPCA. but most would find it weird. Kapi realized that their lives had diverged beyond the point of no return. He couldn't keep trying to rescue his sons out of every hole. Sure, they were in a tough spot, but they had learned things. If they ever got into an agreement with kings to repair necklaces, they would be sure to get that agreement on paper. It was best if Kapi exited the scene. He silently waved goodbye and disappeared from their lives forever. Meanwhile, the king's chief minister had all but given up hope of finding the necklace. His last resort was to pray to the gods, so he went to the temple. When the chief minister entered the temple, he observed the other priests at the temple were trembling, as if with fear. He could not understand it. Typically, the only thing that made these priests and rishis scared was the fear of becoming enamored by material possessions. That led to a new line of thought for the chief minister. Could it be that the priests sensed the presence of the necklace nearby? He quickly scanned the grounds and found it. This was coincidentally the same temple that the rishi was meditating at, and around his neck was Chelana's necklace. It seemed that the rishi hadn't even noticed it. He was so deeply engrossed in his meditation. The chief minister took the necklace and went back to Shrenik. No one could understand how the necklace had gotten around the rishi's neck, and they were afraid to ask. The rishis and the priests at the temple might get offended. The only conclusion the king came to, after consultation with his ministers, was that there had been a travesty, a miscarriage of justice, and the divine necklace had sensed a problem and had teleported itself to a location that was pure of any improper thoughts or any greed or miserliness. This was Star Trek level teleportation technology. Nothing else could explain it. At that point, it became clear what was to be done. The king sheepishly admitted that, yeah, he had kinda not paid for the necklace's repairs, whereas the jeweler had paid for the repair with his life. Shrenik knew now what he must do. He summoned Kapi's sons and offered them the money he had promised Kapi, along with a bit of a bonus thrown in, just as long as they promised not to sue him for mental anguish. That's where the story ends. Kapi means monkey, in keeping with the tradition of naming the characters after the roles they play. In the next episode, we'll go back into the Mahabharata. We'll hear the story of Ekalavya. He's the archer who dared to be better than Dronacharya's students, but he had to pay the ultimate price for it. If you have comments or suggestions, or if there are particular stories you would like to hear, please do let me know by leaving a comment or a review on the site sfipodcast.com or tweet at sfipodcast. You can also find me on Instagram and Facebook. Be sure to subscribe to the show to get notified automatically of new episodes. A big thank you to each and every one of you for your continued support and your feedback. The music is from purpleplanet.com. That's purple-planet.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.